7:08 on Wednesday, May 15th. This is Salim MuWakkil on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. You can also catch us streaming loud and clear at www.wvon.com. Here I am again, privileged to have the pleasure of connecting to America's most astute radio audience. Well, this has truly been an embattled week for the Obama administration as so-called scandals have erupted in many places, many areas of the administration's purview here. From the continuing GOP sniping about the September 11th attacks on a CIA outpost in Benghazi, Libya, where they are relentlessly trying to find some kind of smoking gun to further indict the Obama administration, or maybe more specifically to taint the future possibilities of candidate Hillary Clinton. Now, these conservative critics actually have a point when it comes to Benghazi, but it's not the point that they are pushing. Their point is that the valid point that they have is that the Obama administration is really, indeed, it was trying to downplay the promise of Islamist radicals, of Salafi radicals in Libya. That was part of the process implemented to downplay the reality that their action to topple Gaddafi really had negative blowback. Instead of unleashing an outpouring of democratic sentiments in the North African nation, that regime change, when they got rid of Gaddafi, what it did instead was it abetted the empowerment of anti-Western Islamists. It's really what it did. And the Obama administration really didn't want to emphasize that unintended consequence of their action to topple Gaddafi. So they did have an ulterior motive in downplaying the prominence of these so-called terrorists. Plus, there was genuine anger in the Muslim world about those crude anti-Muslim videos. That video that was being proliferated at that time, was making the rounds. It was a very crude video, and there was a lot of anger about it. So the controversy, those controversial answers that were given by UN Ambassador Susan Rice on those Sunday news shows that have attracted so much conservative ire. Now, it was really a plausible explanation at the time, and I think many experts were unsure of whether that was indeed a reaction to that crude video. So really, this effort is primarily a witch hunt designed to hurt Hillary. That's really what it is. So that scandal can be wiped out as a scandal of note. And the other one, that the revelations that the IRS singled out conservative groups for special scrutiny when determining if their organizations deserve tax-exempt status or not. Much of the confusion for that scandal or what happened there, it came from the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling that suddenly allowed hundreds of previously disallowed groups to gain tax exemption if they would make a simple application. And many of these groups were listed as social welfare groups in order to gain nonprofit status, 501c status. And then they wanted to become super PACs, allowed by the Citizens United ruling, and so they applied to become super PACs, although they were registered as nonprofits, as 501c. So it required shortcuts for that. And since the Tea Party and patriot type organizations generally are very anti-government in general and hostile to taxation anyway, some bureaucrat thought that it might be cost efficient to target those kinds of groups because you were more likely to find violations. So that's the origin of that scandal, and that might, I guess that could qualify as a scandal because that shortcut did single certain kinds of ideological groups of a certain ideological persuasion. Although that particular persuasion did incline them toward the kind of violations that these folks were looking for. Still, there's no excuse. What do you think? How do you think it should have been handled? And do you think it is a scandal worthy of what everybody's talking about, like Boehner's talking about putting somebody in jail and all of that? Okay, so the other scandal that came, that erupted this week was the Justice Department's subpoena of 2 months worth of phone records from the Associated Press and other news organizations that use the Associated Press's phones in a particular area to find out who leaked information about a CIA operation. That's what the Justice Department was seeking when it subpoenaed all of these records. It was almost unprecedented in scope, and it was really a chilling move by the Justice Department, and there's really no excuse for it, although they insist there are good reasons. And whenever there is a violation of civil liberties or something like that, there is always, a good reason, a reason to justifiable cause for it all. And that's why it is necessary to have regulations against that, because people will always find exceptions. They insist that it was a massive security leak in Yemen that reportedly endangered intelligence assets, meaning folks who were, who were operating under the cover of perhaps being members of another organization, and they were actually assets of the CIA or other intelligence organizations, and the revelation of the information made it clear that they were probably the ones who revealed it, and so that endangered them, and that's the line that the Justice Department is using to justify this. And they said that Yemen, which is a country in which it happened, that the Yemeni officials were absolutely furious because it endangered some of their folks as well. So this is the leak that the Justice Department says prompted them to launch this extensive effort in which they subpoenaed all of these phone records. And this was after an internal probe of the FBI and the Justice Department found nothing. So they looked to the Associated Press, which is where the leak surfaced initially. It was Associated Press that broke the story, although they had it earlier. They held back because the administration asked them to. And then they found that the administration was going to leak the story, and they did it. And if you remember when this happened, the conservatives were the ones who were critical of this leak, because they were saying that the Obama administration was trying to trumpet its foreign policy successes, because this was a case where the CIA thwarted a terrorist attack, a reported terrorist attack on a plane, a kind of a underwear bomber type attack that was thwarted by the CIA, and that was leaked by the AP. Conservatives were angry because they said that the Obama administration leaked this because they wanted to make the president look good before the election, make him look good in the foreign policy realm before the election, and so they were angry at the leak anyway. It turns out that the AP leaked it, and it wasn't the administration. So there are all kinds of political intrigue in all of this, and one of the reasons why the Obama administration, I think, overreacted to this was because the conservatives had such a hand in the argument about the leak. And also, Attorney General Eric Holder he recused himself from this because he had knowledge of the operation in Yemen, and so he would be considered party to the activity. So he recused himself, and that's why he has no knowledge of what happened with the AP subpoena. Although there are reports that he nonetheless approved of that activity by his deputy. So that's the other scandal. Now, there's another scandal that didn't quite make the news, but I think is just as noteworthy, and that is the fact that the president and Eric Holder declared Assata Shakur a terrorist. I think what that does is it imperils the black freedom movement in this country, because that is exactly what Assata Shakur was a part of. She wasn't a part of any other group but the black freedom movement in this country. And to declare her a terrorist in line with folks like Osama bin Laden, the folks that that attacked the Twin Towers and whatnot, is an overreaction that is chilling in its implication for those in the black freedom movement. And that, I think, is quite a scandal as well, although you won't hear about that spoken about in the mainstream media. It's something I think that we should be much more serious about, and there is a lot of activity that has been organized to counteract this designation of her as a terrorist. People are signing petitions, demonstrations are being organized even as I speak, and there's a pretty much a groundswell around the country, surprisingly from a lot of young people. I think that's because Common made a song about Assata, and she is seen by many in the hip hop community as a kindred spirit, and so I think there's a lot of young people who are also interested in what's going on, and it is tainting the Obama administration in ways that are much more damaging than a lot of these so-called scandals are in general, because it's hitting his base in a strong way. And the issue of Syria is another topic that we can discuss this evening. It's getting more complicated as a vicious new video has emerged, in which the Syrian rebel actually cuts open the chest of a Syrian soldier, takes out his heart, and bites it. and says he's eating it, that we will do that to other soldiers. It's a chilling and bestial spectacle, and he does it all in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. It's so ironic that a man would invoke the name of the deity, a beneficent and merciful deity at that, even as he's cutting out the heart of someone. And so this display of bestiality by the Syrian rebels makes it much more difficult for anybody in the West to talk about supporting these folks. And makes it a much more difficult decision about who the West can support as a part of a post-Assad leadership. Here it gets more complicated. And of course, Russia becomes more important because Russia can control Assad, or at least can influence him to go to the tables and talk, which is the only way this is going to be settled, is by discussions. And it looks like that's going to be sooner than later. And many of the same people who are clamoring for the Obama administration to get more deeply involved in Syria, those are the same people who are squawking about the Obama administration's lack of attention to so-called radical Islamists in Libya. These are the same people who will take over in Syria. It's really an incredible kind of hypocrisy that we find the GOP involving themselves in. But I think it's an Obama derangement syndrome. They have so much hatred for this first black president that they have been driven to complete irrationality in their approach, and there's really no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. Maybe we can also talk a little bit, if you have a mind to this, about what's going on in Cleveland, the outcome or the ongoing story about the Cleveland kidnappings, the strange situation with one of the women, the progress of brother Charles Ramsey, the unlikely hero who became a bit of a celebrity. And so whatever's on your mind, we can talk, and we want to talk to you about what is on your mind. So let's go straight to the phones, brother. Let's see, Mr. Wells. Hey, how you doing, brother? Mr. Wells, are you there?
Yes, how you doing, Brother Salim?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm all right.
Good.
How's the family, man?
It's cool. Everything's cool.
Yeah. Like I do, and for the listeners, I thank you for the time, and thank you, Salim. Checking in from Cincinnati.
Yes, sir.
We had a scorcher here today. We may have broken a record. I don't know.
Is that right? Oh man, I wish some of that. Wish some of that hot weather would come up here.
Well, and keeping it in context, on Sunday we were at 36 degrees in the morning, Sunday morning, and then here today. So you're looking at a swing of nearly 54 degrees. Now, that is supposed to be a measurable indication of global warming. The extremeness in 72 hours. In 72 hours, you go from 36 in the morning to, may have gotten up to 89 today.
Wow.
90.
Do you think it is an indication of climate change?
It's one of the factors when you go look at South American glaciers that have actually decreased. I mean, it's measurable.
Yes, sir.
I mean, these benchmarks around the planet with these extremes, and then the melting of ice that has been, I mean, some of these polar caps in various parts of the planet have never diminished since like the last 20, 30 years. I mean, it's just so. But I wanted to finish up last week and then encourage something that I'm seeing economically and not feeding. Last week we had dialogue after Dr. Bill had been allowed. And 2 weeks before that, there was a conversation. And I know how the VON staff, if they want to support something, this thing about mental health and black media having a dialogue. And I was critical of that. And I know when we talked about the other staff there and then your position in supporting Terry Small and this whole thing with David Axelrod and the thing about black media communicating mental health and And I'm like, I think we should use a critical inquiry mode of why we're doing that again. And led back to last week with Dr. Bell calling in, who was a mental health professional, who was a psychiatrist out of Chicago. And you all like Dr. Bell, and if people have friendships, fine. And I have friendships. However, when a professional conversation is taking place with the black community, Salim, we have to work on this filter that I have said on this show, on this station. It seems that we don't put on a critical filter when people are talking to us. Now, if people get upset with Wells when I do that, that's what I do as an activist, as an analyst, and I've said what I do as a teacher, as a school counselor. And same thing with Dr. Carson, with his statement. I like to share some things this evening with the community. Salim, are you aware of a term, drapetomania?
What is it?
Drapetomania.
Yeah, drapetomania used to be a disease of black people who would run away from slavery. Okay,
now, you just quoted it accurately for the community, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question last week when it was posed to Dr. Bell about PTSD connected to slavery, now Dr. Joy DeGry has done a lot of work in this area.
She has.
You know, and substantive work. Now, this designation of drapetomania was a term that a physician was trying to use in Louisiana when he presented this to the American Medical Association. So you actually had people using this term to justify bounty hunters doing the Miller Fillmore situation on how they put this Fugitive Slave Act. I want people to comprehend how medical opinion and federal policy or state policy become interconnected.
That's right.
I want people to be very clear about the same way we have this thing now with this let's move foolishness that Michelle Obama's being involved with, and this crap about obesity in the black community. I want people to, when you hear me having these conversations and be, oh, Wells is always being critical, he never agrees. Look, I don't go around lying to the black community. There is an incredible superimposition with professional opinion and public policy.
Oh, always. Yes, sir, always. That's why there's so many think tanks. I mean, that's the whole point of think tanks is to justify policy by using expertise.
And people have gotten on me about being critical of Michelle Obama. I'm like, if people go do the research, and look, that's why I had to go research Dr. Carson the same way I did Dr. Bell. Only fair. If the documents are out there, don't be mad at me. Dr. Bell said something. He didn't think we should be spending time on this PTSD slavery position. And I had another friend of mine who was like, you know what? That's suspicious. Dr. Joy DeGry is a nationally recognized social worker and scholar on this issue, and she is saying
right, but
investigated.
Right, but Dr. Mr. Wells, but I don't think Dr. Bell is saying that means we should stop considering that or stop using that as an argument. He just made he has differences. I think, although I'm not even aware of those differences. But if you say so, I
already said last week about it. He said I don't think we should be doing that. That's what he said, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that he's talking about, in many ways, the logistical aspect of it. How do you deal with it once you find out that we have it? So, there are other. He's talking about there are other mediations that we can use.
But here's the thing. This is why I see it. I was very critical about VON and this co-opted thing with black media and mental health. I was critical and said boycott it. There is some dysfunctionality with the people who are connected with media as we discuss our condition, and then the dominant culture's way of co-opting certain ones, the same way with this guy that works with Bill Cosby. What's his name?
Poussaint?
Yes.
Do
you know Alvin Poussaint was one of the loudest voices saying we should stop doing corporal punishment, but people want to respect him for being around during the civil rights movement with Dr. King.
Yes, right.
You know, so I'm saying.
Well, you're in favor of corporal punishment?
I'm saying we need to go and analyze where it was in the culture, when people said we should stop doing it as a practice. You know, because corporal punishment is not the same thing as pain compliance. Let's not get it confused, or abuse. Corporal punishment is not the same as pain compliance and corrective development or abuse, physical abuse. Corporal punishment has its place. It has always had its place.
Now, see that. Now you're making an assertion, Mr. Well. And see, my point is that you say that your assertions are interventions or critical thinking, but some folks would say that your assertions are merely tendentious assertions. They're not critical thinkings at all.
Here's the thing. No. Here's the thing. Albert Poussin, and rarely do people talk about Albert Poussin's position on saying we should stop doing corporal punishment. With a lot, I'm putting that out to let people know that he got a lot out of the white establishment the same way, and I'm not being mean, to Dr. Bill. He has contributed money. People don't know, you're going to know now. Dr. Carl Bill in Chicago is giving money to the American Psychiatric Association Political Action Committee. Is documented. And he's giving money to political candidates. He is a politically active individual.
Well, and?
No, I'm saying that, wait a minute. On one end, and he was given an award a couple of years ago by the American Psychiatric Association. So, look, I've never met this gentleman. He has gone out. He's worked hard in his life. He's had some very tragic times in his life. Go read the People article that was published. He's been through some trying times.
My brother, so you're not telling us anything we don't know about Dr. Bell, who we know, and many of us admire for what he's doing in our community. I think that your angle of criticism, I'm not quite sure where you're coming from with it.
No, I'm saying that if the gentleman is political, all right, and he gives an opinion about PTSD relative to the slavery.
That's just one. Come on, man. You focusing on that little.
No.
A lot of people have qualms with that diagnosis of PTSD of slavery trauma.
They have qualms with it.
There are a lot of people who have questions and have theoretical qualms with the way this has been diagnosed, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that is invalid, or that doesn't mean that what they say is right. It means that it's open for discussion. That's what it means, brother. And for someone, but you want us to engage in critical thinking, but yet when it comes to disagreeing with your position, then critical thinking is over, right?
No, no. I'm having a conversation. Wait a minute. Did you see the movie Antoine Fisher?
Yes, I did.
Okay, now you just got to be talking about Cleveland. In the movie Antoine Fisher, the black male psychiatrist that's in the movie that Antoine Fisher went to see, he went and got the book. This is a black male psychiatrist when Antoine was in the Navy, and pointed out to him about the slave community and the transmission of abuse from generation to generation. If you're talking about Cleveland, I'm just going to use that as a benchmark. This is not the first time it's come up with somebody who was a psychiatrist who was trained, a black male talking to a black male, saying maybe let's discuss why you were abused by your foster parent. That this behavioral standard, which is not corporal punishment, that it is transmitted. It has been transmitted, and we wonder why we harm one another. This is the profession admitting and saying, like, look, this institution of involuntary. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got you. I got you. But then the question is, Mr. Wells, and this is the last one, is what now? Okay,
as far as what now?
We've established that. Now what?
Okay, what now is this? Like I said, whenever a professional comes, if you all like a professional, fine. There should be some critical review when that professional talks to the black community through black media. There should be some objectivity.
Come on, brother. So that means whenever we get a professional, we got to have a counter professional to give counter views of where he's coming from scientifically. Is that what you're saying?
Look, when they do articles for journals, they call it refereeing.
That's right, but this is a radio show, man. This is not a professional journal. This is not a peer-reviewed journal. All right, bro. I'm sorry, man. Thank you. Appreciate it, bro. Now, that was a long discussion with Mr. Wells. We won't do that again. Dwight, hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me see. How do I follow that?
That's your homie, man.
Yes, sir. That is my homie, and
yes, sir.
You can imagine the nature of our discussion.
Yes, sir.
I won't belabor the audience with that. Okay. I'll just jump into my response to Brother Sambini.
All right.
Who, the other week, I had responded to his comments by asking the rhetorical question, the Black Wall Street bombing and massacre, didn't that tend to weigh or gravitate toward somebody wants to eliminate us? And his response, well, first of all, he declared victory, I guess you would call it the top of the second inning, and he's already declaring victory. It may even been just after batting practice. But his evidence, if I may generalize, was that there are more people in Tulsa today than there was at the time of the massacre. Well, there's more population around the world, but that doesn't negate the fact that some people are trying to eliminate us. Examples. Another of my homies is Clarence James Gamble of the Procter & Gamble fortune. In 1924, upon graduating from medical school, being, multimillionaire, he had no interest in practicing medicine on patients, so he set up laboratories and worked on inventing all different kinds of birth control devices because he was enamored of the eugenics movement. He was a close collaborator with Margaret Sanger. He either wrote or she wrote to him this famous letter where she said, it was on her Negro project, where she said, we need to get I'm paraphrasing, we need to hire the black preachers and the black doctors, to kind of oversee this project in case the more intelligent of our community get the idea that they're trying to eliminate us, Sambini. I think that was 1948. And he went on in the 50s among many other things that he's done, he founded the Pathfinder Fund in the 50s. And when he died, I think it was around 68, it was taken over by the Central Intelligence Agency. And they are in something like 80 countries today. And if you go to their website, it's been like a year since I went to their website, but Clarence Gamble's daughter, Sarah Gamble Epstein, is on the board along with several of her children. The family is still influential in it, and they were promoting what they call crinocrine sterilization. And they took this around to mostly third world countries, and it's
okay, Dwight. Now
it's going to get interesting right now.
Okay, go ahead. I mean, Project Coast, man. We don't have to go that far back. We can go to Project, South Africa and Israel when they actually have developed ethnic weapons that can actually exploit racial differences in our blood frequency, so there's no doubt that many people have labored hard and long to figure out ways to eliminate black folk. No doubt about it.
Okay, are you listening, Brother Sambini? But this crinocrine sterilization is some rice-sized pellets, and they were banned in India, for instance, when the people discovered that they were surreptitiously, these doctors going back up in these villages and surreptitiously slipping these pellets up in the vagina of these women, and it would irritate the uterine lining, and scabs would form. And when the scabs fall off, it was just entirely scarred up, and the woman never had a possibility of having another child. And this was being advertised on Pathfinder International's website approximately a year ago, and I'm looking on their website right now, and if you scroll down on the whole page, the whole front page of their website, everybody on there who are the patients.
But I think, Dwight, and I hear you, man, but I think what Sambini is getting to, or I doubt if he would even dispute some of this. But I think what he's getting to is that we can't orient our lives toward paranoia or fear of that prospect. There are people who want to wipe us out, but there are more people who don't want to wipe us out. There are more people who have moral qualms about genocide. And so what we need to do is just be concerned about ensuring that we're strong enough as a people to prevent that from happening, and not be demobilized by that fear. I think that's where he's coming from. I may be putting words in his mouth, but
well, that's what I was going to say. I did not hear that from Brother Sambini, and if that's his position, I certainly would like to hear it. I thought his position was oppositional to Brother James' repeated assertion that somebody's trying to kill us, and had he wanted to, trend toward what you were saying, then he should have said that rather than jumping in to prove that no one is trying to eliminate us, which everyone may not be trying to eliminate us, but
or he may be saying, or here's another one, if they've been trying to kill us, they've been pretty unsuccessful, and if they really wanted to, they could have been more successful than they've been.
I think they have been very successful at eliminating billions of black people. I mean, when you take into the history of the whole slave trade and colonialism and the exploitation of the natural resources of Africa, if you take into consideration the birth control that is directed around the world, principally toward people of color, I think they have eliminated tremendous amounts of our people. And if they haven't successfully eliminated us, or if some of them don't want to, many of them want to exploit us while we're living. So,
all right, brother. I hear you. I think you make a good point.
I'm looking to hear from you, brother.
All right.
It's the bottom of the second, brother. You up to bat.
Yes, sir. Yes,
all right.
Sir.
Thanks, sir.
All right, man. Robert Dwight. Yeah, but they've also wiped out a lot of their own folks. 100 Years' War, the World War II, World War I. A lot of white people have bit the dust at the hands of their own hostility. So it may just be indiscriminate savagery. It just may be. Let's go to let's see, Anita, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Brother Salim?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Okay. I heard you in the beginning, you were mentioning terrorist groups or terrorists, look like something they're supposed to look like. And, I'm getting rather tired of people trying to connect our people with terrorists. I mean, I think they consider Martin Luther King a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they shot him in his head, and the man didn't carry one gun, didn't drop one bomb. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
And people that do all these things, you know what I'm saying? They say they're normal people. I think we have the mental health system running the government. And it's the ill side of the mental health. I think the people that's writing these rules and laws of what they think is happening I think it's something mentally wrong with them. And I think the general masses need to really sit down and think, did you really see your mother and father make crazy decisions like that? I mean, most of our parents was at home trying to work and trying to keep us warm and, make sure we look half decent to try to go to school. You know what I'm saying? And then you got all these weird people out here trying to make all this money off all these people trying to paint these pictures so they can steal all our money through our taxes and ripping the quality and quantity off of what we purchase so that they can keep all the money for themselves that we work for. We don't have anything to pass on to the generations because of this. And then they tell somebody like Martin Luther King or Jesse Jackson when they say, hey, our taxes got to be split up a little better than this. We can't keep donating to your causes and then it doesn't benefit anyone. And then when they stand up, they have to be threatened that they're terrorists. Now, I'm getting a little sick and tired of that because I can start writing a description of what I feel a terrorist is, and I can include that phony mental health system that they got going on that's running this country. And I think the people that's mentally ill are the ones that's running this country. And I don't mean President Obama.
Why do you think And this is the question a lot of people are asking: Why would President Obama and Eric Holder, two brothers who have some knowledge of the black movement and the history of the black freedom movement in this country, why would they designate Joanne Chesimard or Assata Shakur a terrorist? With that kind of knowledge of our history, it seems to me a very, very troubling development for them to do that.
Well, President Obama, as I've always felt, Jeremiah Wright was my hero on that. I felt that maybe the influence of Jeremiah Wright's experience as an African American would have somewhere sincerely, affected the president.
Yes.
And obviously that experience is just totally different. And maybe he sees things through different eyesight, but we have sense enough to understand that this man has been brilliant as far as being able to at least break the ice on some of the issues and put something better in a higher place. But, still the fact is, when he's making good decisions or bad decisions, we still have stuff for ourselves, and we can't let people label us as a terrorist. Martin Luther King, if they don't agree with Elijah Muhammad, Martin Luther King certainly was not a terrorist, okay? And I'm getting tired of the looking like, we want to paint this picture of the black man always looking horrible. I mean, no, the black man has built the world in America, okay? He has globalized the world where everyone can get paid equal, can be accepted as an individual. He has broken the cycle of one religion saying they're dominant over another, because he's gone through so much in his experience that he's learned to tolerate everything and be just to all of it. And that's the history I want written on the world slate. And I'm tired of all the other people going along with to get along so they can get a little penny here and there, but not at the expense of the African American man anymore.
Sister. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Pete, hey, man. How are you?
Hey, Salim. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Pete.
Hey, Salim, let's put out a scenario on this IRS situation.
Yes, sir.
Do you know that the guy that was in charge of the IRS when this all went down was a Bush appointee?
I do indeed.
Yeah. Okay.
They wouldn't even appoint a new administrator of the IRS. Because,
right. They didn't want to confirm anybody.
That's right.
So they put an acting guy in. But when this all went down, the Bush appointee was in charge. Now let's put this scenario out. They lost the election. Okay. Say the big guys got to this guy and said, hey, look it. Get some of your inside right-wingers in the IRS. And you know that even when parties change, you still got people that were working for the other administration.
That's right.
So what if they got to this guy and said, hey, look it. Investigate all the Tea Parties, and we'll make this look bad on Obama, because this guy, he resigned. So they had to put an acting guy in.
All right.
He's out of there. The acting guy's in. All this comes down, and today they fire the acting guy. There's something fishy about all this. This reminds me of the plumbers that burglarized the Democratic headquarters.
Yeah,
this is an inside job, Salim.
You think so?
Yes.
Well, that's what you call him. Cliff and I were having a problem thinking. The senator from Utah,
Orrin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch, right. He mentioned. He said it's Nixonian. He said this hasn't been since Nixon's time.
They all jumped out with that real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the media's run with all this, and I think we need some investigators out here to investigate the.
That sounds plausible, man. It really sounds plausible.
Well, let's investigate the Bush appointee when he was in charge. Let's see some of his emails, some of his phone conversations, maybe who he met with, maybe he met with the Koch brothers. We don't know, right?
We don't know. You're right.
So I mean, there's a little.
But you know what? I think that's plausible, right? But I think there's even a less sinister possibility that that sounds plausible as well. And that is that, with the Citizens United ruling, man, they were swamped with all of these applications, and they figured a shortcut way to get to folks who may be trying to violate it would be to look for some Tea Party or Patriot indication on the application that would demonstrate their ideological predisposition, which is anti-tax anyway.
Salim, there's a guy that calls in from South Carolina on Progressive Talk. His name is Ike. Mm-hmm. He's a progressive. Mm-hmm. He says that some bar put in for a tax exempt. He says that they're using these tax exempts on the right to funnel, to wash money through.
Yes.
This is why I'm saying, with this Bush appointee guy, this thing looks very, very fishy. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said, they jump out with this Nixonian thing. Mm-hmm. This to me looks like an inside job, Salim.
Well,
and it was pulled off by the right and their big-time power brokers. And so far, they've got away with it, but we need some more investigating. And I think the guy who was there in charge of the IRS.
Yes, sir.
He needs to be investigated.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Take care, Salim.
All right, Pete. Take care. That sounds like a good idea to me. Really, it's plausible. It could have been a setup. And for many months, there was a Bush appointee who was in charge of the IRS because Republicans would not allow the confirmation of another administrator. Because of their hostility toward the IRS, and they wanted to kind of demonstrate that. Let's go to Dirk. Hey, Dirk. Good evening, my brother. Hey, Dirk. Dirk, are you there? Dirk going once. I hear something. All right. That's it. Dirk is gone. All right, let's see. John. Hey, John.
Yes, thank you, Salim.
Yes, sir. How are you, my brother?
Yeah, brother. Yeah, it was tough going to the beginning of your show, man. I mean, I can just tell you, man, the callers, you call into the Salim MuWakkil show, you got to be prepared. Man, I didn't understand what. Let me get to my point why I called you, Salim.
Okay.
The Boston Massacre, the Boston Marathon Massacre. Mm-hmm. When that happened, I'm not in Boston, but I knew the killers. I knew their mama. I knew their daddy. I knew the uncle. I knew where he traveled to in the old country in Chechnya. Mm-hmm. I knew who he met with. I knew everything. There was a tremendous outpouring of sympathy. The president showed up to the spot. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of public interest stories have been about the people who got shot and how they're strong and they're recovering and whatnot. And that's beautiful. But the massacre, the Mother's Day massacre in New Orleans, there wasn't no national news there.
Dig that, brother. Yes, sir.
They said nothing. Have you been to New Orleans yet to talk about urban violence? 19 people shot. And you know what they say, Salim? None of them life-threatening.
And the Mother's Day parade. Me? The Mother's Day parade, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
19. Well, one person, I don't know nothing about him. Where his mama at? Where his daddy at? Where his uncle at? I don't know nothing about him. Where he been in the last few months? Who he been talking to? Where he get the gun from? I don't know nothing about him, Salim.
That's a very good point, bro. He's in the hospital
right now on a ventilator. Got shot in the back, dead alive. They talking about non-life-threatening wounds. You've been shot in the stomach. You've been, there's no consolation for you to say that's non-life-threatening. When you're in the hospital on a ventilator, it's a shame to me how we view this. I ain't gonna use the term that the urban terrorists, but there's no better scenario where it sits in this situation here. But the strange thing about it, Salim, and I'm not gonna keep you, is that black folk engage in classism. See, that's our dirty laundry that was down there in New Orleans. That fella there. That's the dirty laundry.
Yeah.
And nobody want to talk about that.
Well, I
want to talk about that.
You may have a point there, John. I didn't mention it in the rundown for the show. I had it on my sheet. I was going to throw it in, but again, I didn't emphasize it in the way that you did, and I think that your framing of it is much more poignant than I would have framed it. I think you make a good point, man, and I hadn't really quite thought of it in that way. I try to, so I appreciate that.
And let me just say, I personally would like to, just send my best regards to the victims and their families, the people who got shot, because I ain't never been shot, and I don't want to be shot.
Yes.
Because that's a hell. You had a Mother's Day parade, and, come on.
Yeah.
And I think that the nation, I ain't hear the governor of New Orleans, they ain't chimed in. It's just, if there's no better situation where we delve into the urban violence, then it was in New Orleans, and not to mention Chicago. I don't know what. I don't know what possessed the young man. I would like to know what possessed him to do that. Let's humanize him like we humanize everybody else. And I thank you, Salim. Appreciate it, brother.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yes, indeed. That's a good point. I remember, I read about it, the Mother's Day shooting, and I was chagrined that something like that would happen when everyone's out, and especially in New Orleans, which has a cultural tradition of these marches and parades and whatnot, these musical celebrations, parade, street celebrations. New Orleans is famous for that, and so I was very troubled by the fact that there's some talk in New Orleans about attenuating these kinds of celebrations, of abbreviating them, making them shorter, or even stopping them completely because of the problem of violence has become too volatile on the streets, and of course it reminds me of what's going on in this city. Reminds me of what happened in Newark, New Jersey. I was on the East Coast over the weekend, and there was some violence that popped off in Newark, which was pretty upsetting. A funeral, as a matter of fact, outside of a funeral, similar to what happened in Chicago. And this problem of violence is something that's happening all around the country in our communities, and we need to be focused on it. I don't think, however, it should be framed in a terrorist context. It's a different thing. Terrorism is a specific offense, a specific proposition. It has dimensions that are not common in all kinds of crimes. Often, it's for political purposes. As an attempt to coerce or provoke a group to do something. It's a political purpose. It's not driven by criminal intent or personal greed, that kind of thing. That has other dimensions, ideological dimensions, often sometimes religious dimensions. So I think it's faulty to label black criminals terrorists, but still we need to be much more intentional in how we deal with this, and much more proportional in how we project these crimes in the media. We're going to talk about this and many other things when we come back. 808. Salim MuWakkil here on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. I want you guys to go to WVON.com and participate in the daily listener poll and view our current video. That video is of Perry Small, who's evaluating Mayor Rahm Emanuel on WTTW's Chicago Tonight program. Today's WVON poll question is, would you have or encourage a loved one to have radical surgery before a cancer diagnosis? Yes. The alternatives are A, yes, if I knew I had the BRCAI defective gene. I think that is referring to Angelina Jolie, who had that defective gene and decided to have radical breast surgery rather than face the possibility of contracting cancer. B, the other alternative is no, it's God's will. And C, the final alternative is I don't know. The poll question results from the last poll is, can you raise a child to be racially colorblind? The answers were no, 64%, 64.5% said no, and 36.5% said yes. So those are the poll results. Make sure you check out the website and, enjoy yourself when you go on. Let's go back to the phones and hear what is on Andre's mind. Good evening, Andre. How you doing?
Okay, Salim, how you feel tonight?
I'm pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Well, brother, I just got to say, first of all, man, you got some kind of determination. I've never seen a man that's determined to take a tree and plant it on top of asphalt, hoping someday it would take root and grow and fix in carbon monoxide and give off oxygen.
Man, what does that sound in the background, man? I hear is
yeah, I gotta be going in a second. I'm heading out the door right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that should have done it right there.
Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is that, and I'm speaking in reference to this caller. And every week he calls, he's going to occupy your time with his frustration. Seems like he's got some self-hatred or something where he always calls. He's talking about Dr. Carl Bell and just putting down blacks. I don't really understand what his motive is, but you got an excellent show, and I think sometimes you may do you short disservice by spending time with him. When he's arguing.
Well, actually, the brother has said some insightful. He's brought some insightful commentary occasionally to the show, and so I'm hoping that would sneak through every now and then. But I'm beginning to wonder. The last two times he's been on, he's been talking. I couldn't quite get where he was coming from.
Yeah. Well, what I really was calling for was to deal with that Benghazi
yes.
and that thing. Salim, it seemed like to me that the president has been sabotaged because, you could go back further than me, but this country has had a screwed up foreign policy far back as I can remember is Vietnam.
Oh, further than that. Further than that.
Yeah, and that's why I say you can remember more so than me. So the way things going with the president, I think he's been sabotaged. You remember when Bush was in office, Condoleezza Rice went and she met with Gaddafi, and they had some sort of agreement. I'm not sure what the agreement was, but after that, they took him off the terrorist list. Said there's no need to be concerned with him.
Well, he gave up his nuclear program. He gave it up.
Yeah.
And he also, the Lockerbie that he was accused, Libyan agents were accused of causing the Lockerbie crash in Scotland, and he accepted the responsibility, although he never did agree that Libya was responsible, but he accepted responsibility and paid reparations to the families in Scotland, and so that got him off the terrorist list and put him in good graces with much of the West.
Okay, so did anything change with that? Because and when I say that the foreign policy go back, I'm feeling like Barack was sabotaged. He's going along with a policy that's been in place long before he maybe even thought about being president. And I think the advisors that he have around him, he couldn't be making these many mistakes on his own. Somebody's got to be advising him and telling him this is the best route to take.
Well, yeah, he's the president, man, and the president has responsibilities of empire, of maintaining the empire. That's his job, that's his job description. So I don't think we can expect him to do anything radically different than what other presidents have done. And part of that job description really is to justify ill-gotten gains that the U.S. empire has achieved through white supremacist activities and other kinds of despicable kinds of actions in our history. To build an empire, you have to do some pretty despicable things, and we've done that in this country. And so the president inherits all that. And that's part of his gig, and it really is naive for us, I think, to expect him to go to vary far from what the president's job description is.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. So, Salim, tell me, how do you feel about Daryl Issa and John McCain coming out and saying the things that they're saying? To me, it appears to be treasonous, and they act as if these other countries don't have intelligence, too. The United States is not the only one that has intelligence and can see what somebody else is talking about, but other people can see what the United States is talking about, too. And I think when they look and see what Daryl Issa is doing and John McCain and how this government is acting, that gives them more ammunition to go and attack the country or plan some other attack.
Oh yeah.
Do you agree that that when George Bush was in office, that they had information long time ago that Osama bin Laden was planning an attack on the United States, and Bush administration did nothing about it? Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I would say that there were many people speculated on what tactical means Al Qaeda would use, or those kinds of groups would use to hit the United States with asymmetrical warfare. A lot of people were trying to figure out, and there was a lot of intelligence about flight training, and there were people who had those kind of suspicions. I don't think that the Bush administration knew about it and allowed it to. I don't think that they would have allowed it to happen if they knew about it so far in the future, in the past. But I do think that when it did happen, they understood what an opportunity it was to make their move. The neoconservatives and the various groups that were trying to change the complexion of the Middle East, and they've been doing that ever since.
I see. Well, Salim, as you know, the current President Obama administration have been accused of dropping the ball in Benghazi and dropping the ball in Boston. Would you say that the Bush administration dropped the ball when it comes to the terrorism attack in 9/11? Do you see some equivalence there?
Man, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to predict when a terrorist attack is going to occur, man. People could. Soft targets are all over the place. I'm surprised that there haven't been more terrorist attacks, quite frankly, in this country, because soft targets are everywhere, man. I think if there was a serious effort by Islamic groups to attack this country, they could have done it a long time ago. I just don't think it's that important. It's a cult. It's a small cult that we've decided to name Al Qaeda. They're not even Islamic. They are against Islamic logic and Islamic theology with their methodology of killing civilians. And so it's a small cult that does this stuff, man. And we've elevated it to a war against terrorism when really it's a criminal act by a cult of Salafist radicals. That's basically what it is.
And the last thing, Salim, thanks for asking a question. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the IRS.
Yes.
The way I see it is that the conservatives in this country is responsible for the debt. I remember, and I'm going back for when Clinton left office and left that surplus of money here, and the Republicans, in my opinion, stole the election. They've been spending money, and they caused a disaster. And they've been living by this trickle-down theory that if you give them a tax break, that the economy will grow. Well,
right.
That hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. Supply side doesn't work, man, and austerity doesn't work either. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Okay, thanks.
As Europeans are finding out, the austerity programs, the austerions, are being overthrown in Europe because they're entering another recession. So obviously, there has to be another way of working on this. The Eurozone is making it very clear that austerity doesn't work. Maceo, good evening, my brother. How are you, sir?
Hey, Salim, I'm doing great. And yourself?
Very good, brother.
First of all, let me say hello to the WVON listeners, your listeners, and a shout-out, of course, to Woods, Albert, Roxanne, and Mansong. Salim, I'd like to just touch on 4 quick things, real quick. Last week on Wednesday when we last spoke, I had mentioned we were talking on the subject of the Willie Lynch letters.
Yes,
you
sir.
Remember that?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, and I had mentioned to you that Lynchburg was founded by Charles Lynch. However, Charles Lynch, it wasn't, so I was incorrect with that. Charles Lynch was the father. Charles Lynch was married to a Quaker family in that area, and ultimately they bore a son named John Lynch. So John Lynch was the founder of Lynchburg, but it was incorporated in 1805. So I just wanted to correct that. And then moving on, I received an email from the DuSable Museum, and it was on the One Book, One Chicago, and of course that's Isabel Wilkerson's Warmth of Other Suns. I, within that, interpolated into that email was a video of her giving a lecture in Boston, and what was surprising to me, not so much of the numbers of our people that left the South. She quoted or stated it was 6 million. That's a lot of people leaving the South. But the thing that jumped out at me in terms of that video was that she was saying the resistance of the people in the South, the whites in the South, the sharecroppers, the law enforcement, especially to keep our people from leaving the South.
That's right.
What do you think about that? I mean, they had police officers going to the station to stop them from buying tickets.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Defender, man, was considered that they banned the Defender from being distributed in the South because it produced a desire for Southern black folks to come to Chicago. Because there were so many beautiful images of Chicago, and the nightlife in Chicago was exoticized in the Defender in many ways, and so they were trying to discourage black people from their aspirations of going north. I think some of it was because they knew freedom, or they thought that freedom was north as well, and so they wanted to deny African Americans the opportunity to be free. That's one rather spiteful motive they had. But the other motive was, their labor, much of their labor force, like what's happening in Alabama right now. They're trying to get Latinos back, because they passed this very restrictive anti-immigrant law, and now they can't get anybody to work in the fields. So now they're trying to get them back. And it's the same thing, it was the same thing in the South with us, man. We were going to the cities, man, where there were jobs, because they were also, industrial agents, labor agents who were in the South who were recruiting African Americans to come work in the factories at the same time,
And so they didn't want to essentially let go of.
They didn't want to let go. They were the factory agents, the industrial agents were treated like they were proto civil rights folks. I mean, a lot of Southerners were treating them like they were Yankees who had come to liberate the black folks from them, and so they were treated very shoddily as well. Many of the agents were actually attacked. They're all kind of youth. In fact, in the story, in the Warmth of Other Suns, there's some accounts of that.
And on that subject, is it possible? Do you think that you could possibly get her as a guest on your show at some point?
Isabel, perhaps I'll look into it.
That would be a very interesting show, I think, because that's a very interesting. That subject, and but anyway. I thought that her lecture was very fascinating, and a lot of things that she brought up was fascinating. And then lastly, if it's with your permission, I just wanted to pay quick homage to two ancestors that had birthdays, one on Saturday and one yesterday, if it's okay with you.
Well, very quickly, my brother.
Okay, certainly. On Saturday, Joseph Oliver, better known as Papa Joe King Oliver by the great Louis Armstrong, his mentor, was born in Aben, Louisiana on May 11th, 1885. And what's so significant about him, he pioneered the usage of the mute, with the derby mute, the plunger mute, the cups and everything like that, and then group improvisational jazz. Yesterday was Sidney Bechet's birthday, and as you know, Sidney Bechet was a virtuoso, and with the clarinet and with the soprano saxophone. Right. And what's fascinating, if you haven't heard it, and I know you have, but some of your listeners, he recorded a song called Sheik of Araby. I believe that's the name of it.
That was the name of it.
And he played every single instrument, and it's a pretty nice piece. And so anyway, just wanted to say that.
Well, very good, man. Appreciate that, brother.
And
King Oliver and Sidney Bechet, two great giants.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Salim.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Have a great evening.
You too. Brother Maceo. Okay, let's go to Brother Sambini. Sambini, hey man.
Salim.
Yes sir, yes sir.
Man, they're trying to lose this game, man. I'm gonna turn it down. Me and my brother listening to it.
Oh, okay.
They were ahead by 10 points, and
oh man. So what's the score now?
They're down by 1 with about 4 or 5 minutes left. I had to wipe the egg off my face because I picked them in the other game to win by 7 points.
You got a lot of faith, brother.
And then I picked them to win tonight by 5 points.
All right.
I don't know because let me give you an update. OJ's 153, Dale's 142. 42 say too close to call. And may I leave my number on the air?
I think OJ's, man, are much more more people are knowledgeable about them than they are the Dells. I think that's the reason for it.
That's why when we do the performance, hopefully we can do it by June 29th. Our practices are hitting and missing.
773-783-7961.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And there were 3 young men in the schoolyard proudly bragging about their fathers. The first guy, Dwight, says, "My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a poem, and they give him $50. The second brother, Salim, says, "That's nothing. My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a song, and they give him $100. The third guy, Simbini, says, "I got you both beat. My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a sermon, and it takes 8 people to collect all the money." Now, that's for my brother, Dwight. I heard him earlier today with me and my brother as he tried his cumbersomely phlegmatic attempt to hit a home run with a tennis racket. And I imagine he's running around the bases as though he hit a home run. Dwight, you're invited to come hear us, Black Elegance, do the Dells, meet the OJs. And I know you live in another city, but I think you're intelligent enough to make it to Chicago by Saturday and take part in our discussion. Lastly, Salim.
So, wait a minute, Salim. He challenged you in a way. He wants you to come back a little bit to his challenge, which.
Well, I asked the brother to come. I can show him much better than I can tell because he mentioned.
But you gotta throw out something tonight for those who are listening and are hanging on every word, brother.
The billions that he mentioned. Dwight, were you standing there counting all of those people? There's only 7 billion people on the planet. And he said billions have been killed. And I asked him last week, and not just him, to name names. Who is this somebody? See, Salim, if me, you, and Dwight were in a war, and I was a general.
Well, are you saying now? I was trying to interpret your argument, but are you saying that there are no attempts by? Could you turn that down just a little bit, man? Are you saying that there are no attempts by white folks to wipe out black people?
I'm going with what I don't know if he means white, but he keeps saying somebody. So I don't know who he means. That's why I asked him to name names.
Well, he did. He named Margaret Sanger and an industrialist from Cincinnati who was involved with some organization, the Pioneer Fund and whatnot, which are eugenic in nature, and eugenicists have a long history of trying to wipe out the lesser. Those with genetic deficiencies, and they consider African people.
And he also mentioned birth control as though now I understand statistically there are more European women or white women having abortions than blacks. So if he's going to use the argument of with birth control, is it, Salim? I'm gonna just say this: I don't see the evidence, and again, time will prove.
Are you familiar? But okay, let me.
I don't see any Europeans trying to. It was a young blood who was just killed right down the street from where I live at Harold's Chicken. And every time I hear about that, I look at the police blotter and the reader. I see the people getting shot in black neighborhoods now. Unless those are Europeans shooting them.
No doubt about it, man. I understand what you're saying, but I think the point that Dwight is making, what others have made, and I think that you yourself. Understand this as well.
In the past, Salim.
In the past, what Project Coast, for example, they have developed ethnic weapons that are capable of wiping out people who have certain genetic traits, certain genetic tendencies. There are poisons that can be genetically specific enough to cause that kind of destruction. And these chemicals were worked on by South African and Israeli scientists and have been documented to have some effect.
Okay. Remember when you told me to, in so many words, to take with a grain of salt the Ring of Power DVD that I told you I watched?
Yes.
Okay. Now, unless I've heard all of that. I was a part of a group of brothers who did that kind of research. Since those brothers weren't there when those tests were being done, I'm saying I'm leaving room enough in my mind that maybe it's all a hype. In the art of war, the best way to defeat someone is to defeat them mentally and without firing a shot, to break their will to fight.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at this powerful adversary and he can do all of those things with the Trilateral Commission and the Illuminati.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But does that mean we completely become defenseless to the possibility of those kinds of assaults? Although, quite frankly, I agree that even if they were true, there would be really nothing we can do about it. We would simply be vulnerable to it.
If a people believe that they're at war, I'm going to just use Dwight. If Dwight believes that, then explain to me somebody why at the present time blacks are going to churches and other places turning in their guns, but some other people who's supposed to be getting ready to wipe us out or however, they're not only not turning in their weapons, they have sophisticated weapons and they know how to use them, i.e. the white guy whose mother taught him how to shoot, and they hit their target. They don't shoot a target at a target and hit a baby or something. They hit their target.
Sambini, you seem to be arguing Dwight's point.
No, what I'm saying is time will prove whether he or I are correct. All I'm saying is if the white or anybody really believes that, what are they doing to prepare as an individual
I got that.
Against that onslaught?
Yes, sir. All right,
yes, sir.
Brother. Thank you, Sambini. I hear that. What are they doing to prepare themselves against that onslaught? I hope the Bulls are maintaining. Are they maintaining? All right, I think they are. Let's go back to the phones. Maurice, hey, my brother. How are you, sir?
Hey, my brother with that awesome intellect. And good evening to Brother Greg over there. I like him. He's a very friendly guy.
Yes, he is.
Let me remind Sambini and Dwight and all of our other people as we, take these jabs at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Bank of America is worth about $2 trillion standing alone, and along with Wells Fargo and Citigroup and one of the other big boys, they control about 65% of the gross domestic product of the United States and counting. They have a plan, a very serious plan to control the world's money supply for years to come so that somebody is left being the permanent underclass. That will be us if we don't get busy. Now, Salim, you're a very practical man at the end of the day. You got me, you way up there with the words and stuff like that. But you strike me as, bottom line, you're a practical guy.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Let me ask you.
Like to think of myself as that.
And you come off like that. Let me ask you a practical question concerning Mr. Will. If all of us in the United States got behind him right now, say, right on, brother, let's go. You got it. Let's do it. Whatever this thing is you're talking about doing, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
If he had all that kind of support, could you see us finally working with him and whatever it is he's working with, being able to provide our food, shelter, and clothing, our basic human needs, when we get done working with him?
Brother Will, you're saying?
Mr. Will.
Oh, Mr. Wells, the cat who was on the.
Wells. I'm sorry. I thought you were my bad.
No. I mean, I don't. I quite frankly, Maurice, I don't really know exactly where Mr. Wells was coming from these days.
I rest my case.
I think he just wants to launch critiques more than anything else. I'm not.
So let's get real out here, y'all. Let's get real. Come on now, y'all. We're getting further and further behind in this, and we're talking about each other and spending all this time. So,
but you know what, man? I was just reading, thinking of you, Maurice. I was reading this thing about black banks, man, and how they're declining. That the number of black banks has been steadily declining since the 1960s. As of March 2011, the FDIC counted 28 black-owned banks in the U.S., down from 54 in 1994.
That's right.
Man.
Clearly, the work has to be done in that area, and thanks for that research. You continue to inform, educate, and enlighten us, Salim. That's pertinent information in terms of what I'm trying to do with you and Matt and stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that economic hypothesis I threw at you about the Mitsubishi business there with the $1 billion parked in the Bank of Africa, or CA, or Bank of Tokyo, right away, the Bank of Tokyo would be right where they would go. You know.
Yes.
But they couldn't put it in the Bank of Africa because it doesn't exist. I have a little trick question.
It doesn't exist. I mean, but Nigeria has some banks, man, that are pretty prominent and making some international reputations. You know.
Yeah. Sure.
Two large banks in Nigeria are doing pretty well, man. So.
Why do you think over here, though, in the continent of the United States, that we have never had that kind of cultural financial institution, like the Japanese, for instance? What? I can't understand this.
Well, that's because we don't have that connection, Maurice. Our connection to the continent was severed, man, by that trauma of slavery and Jim Crow.
Sure. Maybe I didn't ask the question right, but I know for at least 100 years, many of us have been aware of our African connection.
Yeah, but
right?
We there's only been one serious attempt, and that was a UNIA to make that connection in any kind of a concerted way. There've been other kinds of attempts. In fact, I was involved with one attempt, man. We were trying to develop something with Uganda, a coffee concern. And we had problems then because of many things. But there've been several attempts like that, small scale attempts that have been thwarted by politics and other issues. But there's been really no serious attempt since Garvey, and some little stuff in the 60s, when based on cultural connections.
Right, but nothing
that.
really major, overwhelming, though. But I do believe, though, if we had a Bank of Africa, here's my vision: a Bank of Africa in the downtown area, with the atrium, like maybe at the Thompson Center, with a huge blinking map of the continent with all the resources highlighted and stuff like that. I believe our people would go there without a second thought, Salim, and we can get that wealth concentrated in that bank. I see that as our challenge in the coming years, brother.
All right, brother. That's a good vision. Why not?
God bless you, man.
All right. Thank you, Maurice. You too.
All right.
Exactly. I mean, everything begins with a vision, and the brother has a very clear vision of what he thinks would be inspirational for us economically. And there's no doubt if we could develop something like that. But the question is, even the African continent has a hard time acting in concert. That was one of the amazing things of Colonel Gaddafi in Libya. One of the things that a lot of folks said made him much more of an irritant to the West than his connections to Islamic terrorism, and that was his desire to unify the African continent and to make it autonomous and self-sufficient, using the resources that are native to the continent for its own benefit. And he was doing this kind of resource nationalism along with folks like Hugo Chavez and other South American leadership, which were attempting to begin a process of reclaiming the resources from the global South, from the exploitation, from the exploitative relationship that had historically had with the global North. We see a little bit of that happening with what's called the BRICS formation: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the so-called BRICS nations, which are trying to develop alternative economic institutions that can challenge the World Bank and the IMF and those other MFs. And that's kind of a remnant institution of what was attempted during this time of when Gaddafi was talking about unifying the African continent and resource nationalism. Now that Gaddafi's gone, and the source of revenue and the ideological ideas of unification have been set back now. And so now the continent of Africa is once again being besieged by other nations, particularly China, and of course this country. But China's using economics to wedge itself onto the continent. This country is using the old standby combat boots. We're going in with guns a-blazing. We're sending soldiers into Uganda. We're all ensconced all up in Ethiopia and Djibouti. We have an enormous base in Djibouti, which is on the Horn of Africa, right above Ethiopia. And of course, we're establishing ourselves in Chad and near the area of Mali, where the French are, to try to offset so-called Islamist incursions. And so, Africa is once again being beset by external forces. The momentum that was developed by Gaddafi and maintained and sustained and nurtured by Colonel Gaddafi is now falling apart since he's gone. And perhaps that was the point all the time. Let's go back to the phones. Fahim, hey, my brother. How are you, sir?
Black Power.
Black Power.
We've forgotten all about that wonderful era of the 1960s when, quite frankly, black people were doing everything right. I mean, our athletes were doing everything right. Our musicians were doing everything right. I mean, and you lived through that era.
Yeah, and that's why I can say that everybody wasn't doing everything right. Some people were doing some things right, and there were a lot of people doing some things that are not right.
Well, in a very prophetic and almost scientific way, even the people that weren't doing things right were doing things right, because somebody's going to give you some opposition, and one of the reasons we remain in a tailspin is because we don't understand what's called course correction, and we got to learn that. When we look at what's going on with the Chicago Teachers Union and this upcoming march they're getting ready to have, we need to have and exert just that much energy to chart a course instead of reacting after the fact. We're an after the fact people, but that's, of course, because of the Willie Lynch letter, which was why I called, and of course I mentioned it last time we chatted about how real it was. That was one point I wanted to make. The other one was I wanted to salute Anita. I've heard a few times she really, really, really praising black men and reminding black men how we've been not just the captains of industry, but the captains of civilization. And that's what we need to hear from black women that we haven't heard. Instead, we've been hearing about how there are no good black men and ain't no black men educated enough, blah, this male bashing. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was you mentioned Ashada Shakur and why she's labeled as a so-called terrorist. That's because she doesn't fit the role of the mammy. And that's, my father always talked about the mammy. And in the black community, we've forgotten that the mammy was the consummate house slave, and she ran the plantation. And that's what the Willie Lynch letter was all about, how to keep that mammy. So here, Ashada Shakur, we were just saying, she was an icon of the 1960s. I mean, that's what black men were turning black women into. We were getting her out of the kitchen, so to speak, as far as being a mammy for whites, and she was beginning to give black men the same nourishment that black women have given to whites to build America. So, you know, we've got a lot of beautiful history, man, for us to talk about. And,
you know, one of the things that's pretty ironic, even as you say that, and what you say is you know, has a lot of truth to it. But even as you say that, you know, one of the things that Assata stood for, and I knew her even before she became a Panther. She was very strong for women's liberation, what she called womanism at the time, because the Panthers were extremely chauvinistic, and many groups during that 60s, the period that you talk about, when a lot of people did things right, there was a lot of anguish and debate within the movement over the position of women in the movement, because the nationalists had controlled much of the movement until that time, and the nationalists had a pretty patriarchal view of women and demanded that they remain in the background. And the Panthers kind of challenged that a little bit with their particular ideology, but even the Panthers had a patriarchal trend, a patriarchal tendency that reduced women. In fact, many Panthers said that what women need to do is give it up. I mean that it was bourgeois to withhold sex from the comrades. I mean there was that kind of weird thinking that was going on. And so Assata came along and challenged a whole lot of that mindless patriarchy that was going on in the movement, and so she became in a lot of ways a point of contention for a lot of brothers in that area of New York, in the metropolitan area, because of her very strong feminist, or what she would call womanist, position on that. So it's interesting that you would bring that up.
Let's keep it real. And the black, warfare is what men do, and we see right now in the American media, there's some drama going on because of the just an explosion of sexual scandals.
That's right.
And
in the military.
In the American military, it's in the news as we speak today.
Yes, it is.
In other words, nature's going to take its course. Okay.
Well, but see, that's you can say that.
Let me make my.
All right. But when you say nature's going to take, that's what they said about black. When they integrated the army and the armed forces, there were a whole lot of racial conflicts, and people would say nature's going to take its course. You can't force white people to mix with black people.
We're talking about gender. We're not, as far as manhood.
But a lot of folks said that was nature as well.
Well, but let me say this, because when Huey P. Newton was arrested, and of course the Black Panthers, they appointed Elaine Brown to be the chairman of the Black Panthers. Can you believe she's still alive? I mean, why don't you have her on the show and ask her why didn't she lead the Black Panthers according to that womanist philosophy?
She did. They did institute a womanist ideology within the Panther Party. They did.
Okay. Let me say this, Salim, because every black movement we've ever had in America has been started by black men.
Not true, brother. Snick.
Okay. Salim,
you hit the snick.
I don't debate what's obvious. I'm not going to even go there.
You have to do research. The fact that you said Willie Lynch letter was real indicates that you have some research liabilities.
Let me share this with you. What I know is real. I was on 63rd and Halsted today. Right there on the corner, I saw a Mexican with a corn cart. Now that is, what do we call that? I mean that. My point is, we have to get our bearings, and like I said earlier, we've got to learn how to chart a new course for this promised land, and get back on that course. And I salute what Anita is doing, which is giving praise to black men instead of conflicting and contradicting us as far as what the role of a man and a woman is. Women are not soldiers, Salim.
All right, my brother. Thank you, Fahim. Brother Fahim. All right, let's go to Kay. Hey, Kay, how are you, my sister?
Hi, I'm glad that you got to me. This is one subject after another, but there's only two I want to talk about simply because of the last two people that you spoke to.
Okay.
Okay. He's got a good point there about Elaine Brown because her book, A Taste of Power, I read that, and that would be a good subject matter if you brought her on and talked about the book. You remember I suggested having a book club?
Yes.
And then, if you had people like her on, like we all read the book, and then you invited her on, that would be kind of cool. Because, and that was true about, I'm not debating it, but but when I read the book, yeah, it was true. They were pretty chauvinistic. Very, very chauvinistic. And they wanted the women to give up their money, and there was an incident about food. They said that the guys had to eat first, even though the women were the ones who spent the money. That's right. All this outrageousness. But the other thing I wanted to say was, I did see that film on Press TV about that man eating the heart. I didn't believe that somebody could really do that. And you have to wonder. It's on Press TV, but I noticed it wasn't on CNN or BBC. It wasn't even on RT, which tends to be more... I don't know. It's just not.
CNN had a report on it, but they didn't show the actual event. Well, but they had someone responding to it.
If anyone wants to see it, go to Press TV or go to the Son of Malcolm's blog. You'll see it right there. And
speaking, I'm glad you said that. I want to get it out before the end of the show, but we hadn't spoken about it. But Malcolm Shabazz, the grandson of Malcolm X, was killed in Mexico City.
Yeah.
And we hadn't really talked about it too much on the show, but I wanna bring it up. So I guess I'll talk about it Saturday.
That would be. And the final thing is that, remember how one of your callers talked about having those genetic warfare? Yes. You and that gentleman. Yes. I was wondering, maybe they did that to Hugo Chavez, like they got something in his water or something, simply because Gaddafi's gone, Chavez is gone. Everybody's pretty much been neutralized. Even Malcolm X's son grandson, I should say, was neutralized. Because I remember seeing a picture of him shaking hands with Muammar Gaddafi, and they said that this picture was taken weeks before Gaddafi's overthrow.
It was
so maybe he was grooming him. And they said, we got to get rid of everybody. Get rid of the head, the next generation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I know that's a wild what do you call it? Controversy?
Conspiracy.
Right. Yeah, but you have to wonder how, in such a short period of time, anyone who could have done anything, they're just neutralized. Because I am certain that if Malcolm X's grandson got the proper grooming, he would have a huge following here, U.S., worldwide.
Yes, a lot of people were clamoring for him to be, to assume that role. Absolutely.
Yeah,
he was beginning to do it, from what I understand.
Right, and then the fact that Gaddafi met him, I'm sure.
Well, he went on a mission with Sister, former representative. Her name is escaping me for some reason right now, but he went on a mission with her, and that's when he met Gaddafi. That was his first venture into a political kind of an ideological political journey, because he had been away. He had really been. Staying away from that, kept away from that kind of stuff, right. And then after the tragedy happened with his grandmother, and he went he served some time. He began to become introspective, pretty much like his grandfather.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, I'm going to let somebody else get some airtime.
All right,
but thank you for letting me speak.
All right, thank you for calling. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, Taste of Power was Elaine Brown's book. She became the chairman of the Panther Party after Hughie was no longer chairman, and this was really during that period when the West Coast Panthers broke away from the East Coast Panthers. The Panthers on the East Coast became the black the black underground. Wow, man. the Black Liberation Army and the West Coast remained the Black Panther Party. It became much more ensconced into electoral politics. They even ran a candidate for mayor in Oakland. And Elaine became much more mainstream. She mainstreamed the Panthers in a way that they hadn't been in the past. Although they still had a radical edge, but they were much more involved in the actual administering of political life in Oakland. And on the East Coast, however, they went underground. They decided that the Panther Party was too vulnerable to COINTELPRO after seeing Fred Hampton become assassinated, after various groups in New York were targeted, including Assata Shakur. After all of that began happening, they decided that underground life was better for the Panthers on the East Coast. Let's go to the last caller, Sputnik. Good evening. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Salim?
It's going well, brother. How are you doing?
All right. You were right. Fahim was wrong. Ella Baker, as you well know, founded SNCC April 15th of 1960. She's definitely a woman.
Absolutely.
So, he had that one, wrong. And then also,
let me say, and I don't mean to cast aspersions on Fahim, because the brother's very sharp and analytical in many ways, but I think he just skips some of the research, which is very important. We need to be much more seriously grounded in what we're saying, so that we can, deliver information that's factually based.
That's true.
Yes, sir.
Oh, let me just say this too. Also, SNCC was egalitarian as far as gender roles. Gender roles in the movement. Prior to the Panthers, I mean, women like Parithia Hall, I think Dolores Robinson, if I have her name right, were in key positions. Yes. With SNCC, and SNCC had predated the Panthers by 6 years.
They did indeed. That's right. In fact, Rat Brown, who was first the executive secretary, I think, of SNCC before he became a Panther.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that history, I mean, it is there.
Yes, it is there.
If one looks into it. And one final thing, yes, Huey P. Newton wasn't the chairman. That was Bobby Seale. Huey was the Minister of Defense / the servant of the people. Although the Panther Party, which you already know was one of your organizations, was guided on the philosophy and the ideology and grew out of the political imagination of Huey P. Newton.
Yeah, it did. It did, and Huey turned out to be quite a theorist. He was a kind of an amateur theorist when him and Bobby began the thing, but later on he got some academic training, and he became a pretty creative theorist in the way he was imagining black liberation.
Right. Well, for amateur theorists, I mean, he did a whole lot. He was the one, the brainchild monitoring the Oakland Police Department. And he had found a loophole while studying law books when he was a student at San Francisco State, studying law, and nobody else did it.
Merritt College.
Merritt, but then also he took law classes at San Francisco State.
Right, but it was at Merritt when he designed that program to shadow the Oakland police, standing, I think, 60 feet away or 50 feet away. When they were allowed to carry guns, even as they monitored the police operation.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, and then of course, the Repressive Mulford Act, came up in '67 because the Panthers legally were able to monitor the police, while bearing the right to bear arms. And it's so funny because where was the NRA then? When the Panthers were.
That's a good point, brother. Absolutely, yes, sir.
All right, I'm out here.
All right, Sputnik. Appreciate it, man.
All right, peace.
Peace, bro. Good information. Absolutely. The Panthers, a lot of folks said that it were the Panthers who sparked the whole movement toward gun control when they showed up in Sacramento when Reagan was there. Let's go to the last call. Will, hey, brother, quickly.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Right quick, I just want to comment on backpedal off of a conversation that a brother had with you earlier. He was referencing to at the point, probably maybe I'm going to go with the 70s, when black folks were, he used the phrase, they were doing everything right.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was actually what really took place, but the point I want to make is that blacks collectively were moving up the ladder in terms of getting respect. You know, you had Caucasian people emulating blacks at the time.
Still,
you know,
I
mean, black folk were feeling emotionally and psychologically good. And for good reason, because they were progressing. Matter of fact, we were being accepted by a host of different races. Now, here is my main point to you about that.
Got to make it very fast, brother.
Okay. Today, brother, that whole era has been dismantled.
All right, I got you.
Okay.
I hear you. And I've heard that before, and